Hi everyone, this is Ari Kopel with Shattering the Matrix. One more time with our wonderful guest, Marshall Masters. We had such a wonderful interview last time that I'm telling you, the results of the comments that I've gotten back, Marshall, have been really very, very positive. A lot of people have been saying that, and a lot of people that I'm talking about have followed you for a while. And
right.
So the comments back are, like, this has got to be the best interview I've ever heard. So that's good. That's good. And it just happened to be on my show. I take that. I'll take that any day. So thank you for doing that. And so we have you back because, again, the Nibiru Planet X thing out there that is something that we're trying to obviously bring to light so more people get to acknowledge this, so what I'd like to do today, a little different, is that I'd like for those people who have not maybe heard of you before, which I don't know why, if they're listening to this type of show about Nibiru Planet X, why they wouldn't have, but for those that are new to this and are tuning in for the first time on this particular show, I'd like for you to perhaps introduce yourself, and then what got you from, your past experience, because it was so different from this right now, what got you on the path of this Planet X situation?
Fair enough. I'm the publisher of Yowza.com. That's my science site, YOWUSA.com. And also you can reach it at MarshallMasters.com. That's with 2 L's. And this is where I've been publishing on Planet X since January of 2002. And that was my first article went up. And I've been working in this field continuously since then. It's what I do 7 days a week, 24/7. And recently, my fiancée, soon-to-be wife, is Jennifer, and I have started Knowledge Mountain Media and Knowledge Mountain Church of Perpetual Genesis. And the point of Knowledge Mountain is that it is a faith-based organization, non-denominational teaching church for people in awareness, because over the years I have been, in a sense, and I have to say, I really am at heart a born-hard geek, as in live long and prosper, logic is a tweeting bird, thing.
Yeah.
Talk about a Spock wannabe. And however, this work is transformative. And you find out that if you dwell in the science of it, you never achieve hope for the future. You can achieve self-sufficiency, but you can never achieve hope for the future. And what I've been doing also with this is just letting people know they're not alone. There's so many of them in awareness, but they're scattered to the breezes. Yeah. And so they don't really see their brothers and sisters in awareness, whereas I do, because I'm a focus point. Mm-hmm. And so the point of the church really is self-sufficiency knowledge is out there. It's well documented. It's fabulous, and there's a lot of it. But in terms of having hope for the future and knowing that you're not alone, these are the areas where I have been essentially ministering to people for a long time, just, helping when I talk to them and they're in awareness. And so the church just is a natural outgrowth of what I've been doing for over a decade. Nice. And that's the spiritual side. I keep the two firewalled. Science is science, and spiritual is spiritual. You don't mix the two. Science is giving you the skills to survive. Spirit is giving you the will to survive.
Exactly.
And that's really the important thing. So that's where I am now. Where did this all start?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. Well, all of this started when I was the first guy on the block in 1999 in my entire neighborhood to get DSL.
Oh, wow.
And it took AT&T 2 guys all day to figure out how to make it work.
Uh-huh.
I never saw 2 more frustrated telephone guys.
Yeah.
And so they finally got it working, and of course I had the whole circuit to myself, so it was pretty zippy, and I'm having fun. I said, all right, now I got to test it to see how fast it really is. And I said, okay, I'm finding these Nostradamus websites out there that have a lot of graphics, and they're poorly designed web pages. So I start haunting Nostradamus sites like crazy because it was a great way to test the bandwidth.
Sure.
And I come across all of them are going, King of Terror, King of Terror, King of Terror, King of Terror, King of Terror. There's Nostradamus had predicted that in 1999 that there would be a comet visible during a lunar eclipse. And so happens it did occur in 99 over Turkey. And so I was drawn to that just because I was seeing this King of Terror all over the place.
Right, yeah.
And I'm watching the Turkey news feed out of NASA. And the thing was, as a CNN science feature producer, I spent a lot of time sitting behind shooters looking at what they were shooting, what they were capturing. And on a professional camera, you have what's called an overscan area. And so there's a little line inside the viewfinder. Everything inside the line is what's going to appear on people's TV screens at home. Outside, in the overscan, that's not. But it gives you a good, with a professional camera, it really gives you the ability to see things that are encroaching, action that's moving in, how something's moving in. So consequently, shooters, that's what we call videographers. When they see something in the overscan, they just are like bird dogs. You know, the tail is up, nose is pointed. They go right to it. Zoom. And this shooter saw something in the overscan and went right to it, zoomed in on it, got a good capture, studied it for a couple of seconds, and then pulled back out to the previous field of view. Well, for other people, that looked like zig and zag. For me, I'm going, hello, what's he seeing here?
Yeah.
And so I downloaded that MOV file, bought a copy of QuickTime Pro so I could take out screenshots, and studied it extensively. And sure enough, I found 3 objects, which I named A, B, and C.
Whoa!
Whoa, is that original?
That was great.
I mean, it should have been Manny, Mo, and Jack or something.
Right?
And so I posted up an analysis on the Millennium Group, and it was an alternative science website that was at that point a little bit of decline. And I came in like a fresh breeze, posted this, 5 million hits.
Whoa. Oh, my
It was monster. I mean, and this is like in the early days.
Yeah.
People were downloading the analysis like crazy, and that's what put me on the map was that. And Richard Hoagland came out and said I had been confused by flash bulbs. And the first thought came to my mind was, Richard, have you heard of electronic flash?
Right.
Like, we're not sitting out there with old little Kodaks and the little bulbs when I was a kid, put the bulbs in. Okay. So what was interesting was that a cosmonaut on the Mir station from France took pictures and had seen all of that. And I get help from people that just shows up mysteriously.
Right.
I don't ask questions. I just take it. Thank you.
Yeah.
My life's like a Louis L'Amour novel. Guys with white hats, guys with black hats. They all have 6 shooters and ponies, but the white hats always win.
That's right.
And they all kiss their horses and go off into the sunset. So some white hat, this cosmonaut, sends it, and 2 of the objects are identified. The flash bulbs, as Hoagland called them. And one was a low Earth communications satellite in low Earth orbit, LEO, and the other was a spent Russian booster that had not fallen back to Earth, second stage booster. The third object was definitely the comet. I caught the King of Terror comet because it had the telltale corona on the head, as comets do.
Amazing.
And so I found that comet, and from what I get from the other side, they do say it's going to come around to haunt us. But that was a fulfillment of a prediction by Nostradamus.
Interesting.
That, yes, there was a King of Terror comet, and it was only visible. It was only visible because it was behind the sun.
Wow.
And it was only visible because of the full lunar eclipse. And so that's what put me on the map. But how I got to the point where I was even interested in any of that was during the 90s. I had a travel business in Russia. I was a tour operator specializing in homestays, independent travel, small groups. Mm-hmm. And I would go over in December and come back in January each year, because that's when I did my setups and, site visitations, getting ready for the summer season.
Okay.
And my season would typically kick in around March. And so this gave me a good chance to go out and, get on the ground, do everything I needed to do. And it was also my favorite time of year to go to Russia. It was much more beautiful to me in the winter than in the rest of the year. Mm-hmm. And going over, I used to fly on Aeroflot. And going over was always at night. But coming back over the pole from Sheremetyevo to San Francisco International, we flew over the Arctic. And the first time I saw it, I was just mesmerized. I just sat there with my face to the plexiglass for seemed like hours, because from horizon to horizon it was this single blanket of snow and blue ice and rock outcroppings that were just something else. Blue ice. Wow. I mean, this was something. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. Blue ice, you went to 7-Eleven, they put some crutch stuff in a cone of blue syrup. That was your blue ice.
Yeah.
Bada bing. Here I am. I'm seeing it, this ancient ice for the first time. Well, I flew to Russia many times over the subsequent years. My last trip over and back was 98 over and 99 back. And what I saw year after year was that the Arctic was deteriorating until... And it wasn't like, some years up, some years down, hills and valleys, natural cycles. It was just steady deterioration until the last time I saw it, it looked like the busted windshield of a car in a wrecking yard. And something that was so magnificent was now just, it was ugly.
Wow.
It was just fractures everywhere. And that was when I said, just on a wild guess, I think I'm going to believe my lying eyes. So what is happening to our planet?
Yeah.
Now, back to King of Terror. King of Terror launched me into writing for Millennium Group, and there I met a couple of other folks that were in Mensa. And I'm in Mensa. Well, not paying the dues anymore, but have the certificate. And we got together and just said, let's figure this out. And in 2000, we published our results, which were that we found that it was this weather weirding, as we call it today, or now it's become weather madness, was not man-made, principally man-made. It was principally in response to solar radiance.
Okay.
All right. And something was happening with the sun. What we're doing, trust me, is exacerbating it. I mean, just the fact that we're putting all of this carbon into the oceans and acidifying them, we're killing the base of the food chain. That plus radiation we're dumping in from places like Fukushima, sure. We seem to be hell-bent on destroying our seas. And but still the same. It was still solar driven. Well, that took us to the next stage, because originally it was, what about the weather? And I mean, this is back in '99, back when people were still being called tree huggers,
right,
for thinking about the environment. Mm-hmm. We were maniacs, idiots, terrorists, with duct tape. And we said, all right, now, next logical step. If the Earth is responding to the sun, then is this a natural cycle of the sun, or is a rogue element involved? So we started looking at all of the other planets, anything that had an atmosphere. Wow. And sure enough, everything is perturbed. Okay, even on Venus, X-ray and radio emissions and frequencies and bands never before witnessed. Mars had surface warming that if we had that same degree of surface warming here, we would have an ELE, an extinction level event. We're looking at the gas giants. Everything with an atmosphere was being atmospherically perturbed by what was going on. So we knew this was all starting with the sun. Okay. What we were not able to determine, when we looked for variance and the argument for variability, it wasn't there. At least not in human folklore and history. That was then eventually said, okay, we're dealing with an interloper. Something's coming into the system and the sun is interacting with it. And that was how we arrived at Planet X. And I was familiar a little bit with the work of Zecharia Sitchin, wasn't really paying attention to it. And but we then came across a copy of manuscript of the Colburn Bible. And the Colburn Bible was written by the ancient Egyptians and the ancient Celts. It's in two books, the Egyptian text and then the Celtic text. Mm-hmm. And the Egyptian texts were written about the same time as the Tanakh, the Torah, the 5 books of Moses. And the Celtic texts were written after the crucifixion, but before the New Testament was written, in that time frame. Okay. It was something that came under a lot of attack because the ancient Celts did not, like many Christians at the time, did not accept the Trinity concept. That to them, Jesus, or as he was known as Yeshua, was an ascended master, a great teacher. And that's how the Celts, they knew him, and they loved him, but as a great teacher. Okay. Well, that kind of, when it cut across the grain, so to speak, with the PTB, who had gone to the Holy Trinity aspect. Mm-hmm. And so the Glastonbury Abbey was burned and was razed. But a lot of this ancient text that at that time was called the Great Book, was about a fourth of it was saved. Wow. And that was then combined with an ancient Celtic text, the Cole Book, and it was then formed as the Colburn. Okay. And I have, as the publisher, I call it the Colburn Bible because a Bible is an authoritative reference work. Okay. Right. And that's what this really is. Now, you read from the Egyptian texts, they have a tremendous amount of information about it. This is what caused Noah's flood, which in the Colburn is the story of Sesuda and Hanok. And then they document the Exodus. And interestingly, they document it from the Egyptian perspective.
Interesting, okay.
And the Egyptians say that Pharaoh of Exodus died at the Red Sea.
Wow.
He drowned because he was right at the front leading the pack. The accounts of what they called destroyer, both the Hebrews and the Egyptians, and if depending on the translation of your Old Testament, It may say destroyer, it may have an alternative word, but destroyer is what you find in the Tanakh. And that's the part, when we're doing comparative history, we only go off the Torah, the Tanakh, because what we have today is exactly what was penned.
Wow.
All right? Whereas with any of the Christian Bibles, it's what you just read them. I mean, they just people are translating from the original root.
Right.
And so the thing about Noah's flood, what people have to understand is, if you take Noah's flood and Exodus and put them together as a unified cataclysm, it connects perfectly. All right. When I look at Moses, what I see is an Egyptian general. Mm-hmm. Okay. And he had to understand that when the Torah was being written, that he had to transmit a tremendous amount of information across thousands of years. Taking a tribulation with Exodus and Noah's flood and making that one complete story would probably be overwhelming to people who have no point of reference.
Sure.
No sense of history. But, and let's take a quick look at that, because Noah's flood, what was that really all about? Well, that was a pole shift event. And we're going to have another pole shift event in this coming Flyby. How do we know it was a pole shift event? Well, all of the stories, and there are many deluge accounts. Like I said, in the Kolbrin, it's called Sesuda and Hanok. We call it Noah's flood in the Tanakh. And Noah was instructed to build the ark on the side of a hill. Now, the logical thing to do in today's mindset in our consumer societies, if you're going to build an ark for surviving a global catastrophe, you build it down on the harbor so that your tribulation doesn't happen, like everyone says it's not going to happen.
Exactly.
Then you convert it into a hotel and a casino and you get rich. All right? Now, I mean, it's like, up on the side of a mountain, you got a few desperate pilgrims. And that's who's going to visit. So, but now think about, you have a mile-high tsunami wave coming because the skin of the earth, the lithosphere, has literally had a crustal shift. It has physically shifted. Well, the water in all of the Great Basins is going to slosh out.
Right.
All right? Now you have, if you're along the coastline, you have a mile-high tsunami coming at you. And anything that is in the harbor is toast, because that thing's going to hit, once it hits, it's like hydraulic sandpaper. It's just going to chew everything to pieces. But now you have this mile-high wave that's coming in, and as it crosses land, now it's losing energy very quickly. Okay? And Noah's Ark is situated in a place where that tsunami wave ebbs, so that instead of the water smashing over the side of the ark and tumbling it and tearing it apart, by being where the tsunami wave ebbs, the wave comes up underneath the keel of the ark, lifting it up off the chocks and pulling it out to sea.
Wow.
All right. So that's Noah's flood. Mm-hmm. Now, you take Exodus, and if you take Exodus and reorder it in scientific order, the plagues of Exodus snap together like Legos. Starting with, you have the first plague, which is the water turning red. All right?
Right.
Now, that is going to, when we pass through the tail of this system, all right, and it's a brown dwarf star, and it's surrounded by an iron dust cloud, and it's very dirty. So we're passing through the tail, and then you have the burning hail, All right. These are going to happen together. What we're going to have are heavy meteorite showers, and these meteorites, from what we're told by the guides, are about the size of a pig's head.
Wow.
All right. And they're not, thankfully for us, they're not solid iron. You have iron and stony, and then iron stony. Those are the three types. These are iron stony. They have iron in them, probably mostly shrubbersite, and then you have rock. All right. So if it's a solid iron meteorite, when that hits, boy, that's going to leave a mark. Blow it.
Oh yeah.
That's that's like getting hit with an armor piercing round. The stony iron are different, so they're not going to be as destructive, but they're going to be plenty destructive. Now, you take all this iron, you throw it into the water. The water's going to turn red.
Right.
And because go to a brickyard, say, how do you make those beautiful red fascia bricks? They'll say, we just have the same old gloop and we threw iron into it, and that's what we do.
Okay.
That's how they make red bricks. So now what will happen is you have all of this falling plus the shrubbersite. The shrubbersite is going to be releasing vast quantities of nutrients that are going to be spawn algae blooms. So the waters will turn from red to green from the algae blooms. Algae is going to generate microcystin. Microcystin is very toxic. It will kill men and cattle. All right, burns in the water. So the frogs get out because the frogs can, the fish can't, so it eats them alive, and they float to the surface. Then comes the flies. Then you have the methane. Then you have, and all of these.
Just one thing leads to the other.
That's right. Yeah. One thing leads to another. Now, at the end of the tribulation cycle, go back to Noah's flood, 40 days and 40 nights. Right. And modern science has always said, well, that's nonsense because there's not enough surface water on the planet to do that. Well, yeah, but again, I'm thinking back to Moses said, we're going to take this one big story and divide it up into two stories. So we take the 40 days and 40 nights, and we move that not at the beginning of the tribulation cycle, but it's the last thing that happens. Now, it makes perfect sense because we're going to have these meteorite storms. It's going to look like road flares falling out of the sky. Our atmosphere is going to be a thick soup of God knows what. And what's Gaia going to do after, this Planet X system is passing down to the south and we finish transiting the tail, and that's the end of the worst of it. It's going to cleanse itself. It's going to rain. It's going to rain like crazy. It's going to have 40 days and 40 nights. And that's going to be wonderful because you're going to have all of this iron oxide, all of this miserable stuff that has completely ruined surface water, lakes, streams, and those are really going to be, the water's not going to be potable anymore, and fresh water is going to really crisis for people. Keep in mind, fresh water that's on the surface that's not an ice pack is 1% of all of the water on the planet. And so, this is going to cause a tremendous amount of hardship. So this 40 days and 40 nights of rain, that'll be the very end of the tribulation cycle, is going to cleanse all of these waterways. What are not going to do very well will be mangroves, swamps, sloughs, places where water tends to move very slowly. It's not going to have the velocity to pick this stuff up off the bed. So those areas will take it'll take a long time to cleanse those areas. But rivers, lakes, and streams, 40 days and 40 nights, it's going to wash them clean.
Wow.
Also, we're going to have a lot of land masses that will sink during the tribulation, but new ones that will rise.
Right.
And these will be seabeds. Well, the 40 days of rain, 40 days and 40 nights, is going to wash the salts out of that seabed area, leaving us with immensely fertile sources of soil, topsoil. I mean, it's going to be, if you go to the Central Valley in California, that was an inland sea in ancient times. That's the reason why the soil is so fertile and rich. And all you got to do is add water, and that was it.
Yeah.
The rest of the country is really going to be in it for a surprise when California gets down to a 6-month supply of water.
Yeah.
Boy, watch your prices of things like pecans and whatnot are going to go sky high, because that's a breadbasket for the country. So this is the process of going and finding this, and step by step making the determination.
So you basically went into the historical record, kind of, and found this, that there was the same kind of story, right, being told by the Egyptians, also being told by the Hebrews, I'm assuming. And so based on that, you were able to... Now, could you say that what they were observing, or is there anything in their record or their history that says... we observed this, and this before we actually saw the bad stuff come upon us, before we actually saw the meteorites and all the rivers turning into red like blood and all that. Was there any evidence in their recording that stuff happened before that they can say, oh yeah, there's something very strange going on? And what I'm trying to get at is, are we there today that we can see evidence of stuff happening today that we can say, there's something that was observed back then that we could also observe now, that we can say this is coming in as well?
Right. They gave us harbinger signs.
Okay.
They described the flybys, and the ancient Egyptians, there's nothing like, the woo-woo princess shot the magic arrow in the sky nonsense. I mean, you read their accounts of the flybys, and it reads like a man on the street interview. It's brutally frank, very descriptive. One of the things I find very interesting is the Egyptians tell us about the extent of fear that people felt. Now, keep in mind that Egypt in this time, average lifespan was about 30 years. People didn't live long back then. Yeah. If they were wealthy, fine, but for the most majority of people, life was brutally hard. And so you're talking about essentially what is, the largest segment of the population will be teenagers. And what the ancient Egyptians tell us is that when this is upon us, it creates so much fear that women become infertile and men become impotent.
Wow.
Now, that means when we see it, it's going to be devastating enough to scare the sex out of a teenager, and I'm not making that as a joke. Okay? It's got to take an awful lot
right,
to scare the sex out of a teenager.
Yeah.
All right, and so that's what it will do. Now, they did give us predictions, and as a matter of fact, it was when one of the harbinger predictions came to pass, and they gave us numerous ones. Two that I find most interesting was the one that caused the Colburn to be released by the ancient Chaldean Society in England, in Scotland, who held the manuscript and kept it out of sight because it's something that people always wanted to destroy. In the Colburn, the ancient Egyptians predicted the fall of the Soviet Union. and the rise of radical Islam.
Whoa.
And they said that a seafaring nation, a large seafaring empire, would, like an apple rotten at the core, suddenly fail. Well, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was the largest naval military power in the world. We think America is. No. We have a third fewer ships, and we're more focused on air power projection through our nuclear carriers, and also strategic through our submarines. The Russians had a different strategy that was cruiser missiles and missile boats. That was their heavy naval presence. It has a lot of advantages, and we're going to see them accruing those advantages. But and then the other was the prediction of radical Islam. They said that a new faith would promise peace to the world and bring war to all four corners.
Wow.
That's Islam. Judaism is about life, Christianity is about love, Islam's about peace. And so it described it pretty well, but it was the fall of the Soviet Union that triggered the release of the text by the Chaldeans in Scotland, and then the order, after the mission had been finished, they just disbanded and disappeared. And
so what would be the point of, and I'm just curious, not that you would know, but I'm assuming that they're putting this information in the Colburn, is what I understood, for the purpose of, was it like a warning that if we see this happening, then we're at the cusp of this thing, this harbinger, this, us being able to observe all the things that they witnessed back then?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it's a message in a bottle, okay, sent across the sea of time. Think of it, if you're this generation, future generations are going to have to deal with it. If future generations fail and our species goes extinct, then there will have been absolutely no purpose to your life. Yeah. You're just going to be another bone in a fossil record. Mm-hmm. So we do this, we pass it forward, or as the expression goes, we pay it forward, we share the knowledge, and we try and do that. And that's what they were trying to do. Okay. And I think that they did an excellent job of describing particularly with the story of Exodus and Sesuda and Hanok, the parallels to what we find in the Torah, which the Old Testament, as it's known to the Christians, really has a heavy basis in the ancient Sumerian texts that were translated by Zechariah Sitchin. And so there's a lot of, commingling, if you will, of these ideas. But the Colburn is very precise in telling us that, it's giving us the harbinger signs, and it's coming. Now, for those that are interested, I publish a book called Planet X and the Colburn Bible Connection. Mm-hmm. Now, this is written by Greg Jenner, an excellent analysis. He compares the Colburn with Bible prophecy and other sources of prophecy. He takes a secular, impartial view of it. And when you see how the dots connect between the Colburn and the others, then truly the Colburn is the Rosetta Stone of Planet X. Yeah. And that is, it's a small book. It's a one-day read. I call it the cup of tea read. For those out there that are sitting there scratching their chin going, well, I don't know about all this, and, if they're spiritual, they believe in our ancient wisdom texts, mm-hmm, then get Greg Jenner's book. I call it the cup of tea. Right. You'll read it in a day, and then you're going to know if this is your cup of tea or not.
Exactly.
And that's the way to go at it.
Yep, I totally get that. All right, so for those of us that are listening to this interview, that want to believe, they're ready to believe, but some of us have gotten so jaded, all right, because we've been told about this before or something similar. The 2012 situation, of course, there was so much hype about it. Nothing happened. That was extraordinary, Then we had the 2000 Y2K situation, nothing happened. And so now, you're coming across, bringing this information out. There's others as well. And, I'm making it my mission now to bring this awareness as well. Why do we need to pay attention now? We're looking sometimes at the internet, and the internet is full of some good information, and there's a lot of disinformation. And it's a great platform to have a lot of, the agents of the dark side use the information we're bringing in, and then, of course, bring in all the deceitful stuff, right? So we don't know whether we're coming or going. We don't know what's true, what's not true. There's a lot of pictures of Planet X, Nibiru or whatever, the second sun, that a lot of people are saying, oh, those are just sun dogs, that's just a camera. It was shot behind a window, whatever. How do we know what we're looking at is genuine? How do we know that this thing is really out there? What clues can you give us that we can start saying, that's true? This is, what you're saying, makes sense. I've actually experienced that. What do you say to the audience about that, those naysayers?
All right, well, first off, I'm going to cherry pick comments that you've just made in this question.
Okay.
All right. You talked about Y2K.
Yep.
You talked about Mayan calendar.
Yep.
Okay. And I think the best way to understand what's really happening today and how people are being manipulated is, and let me just be front. First, I'm going to tell you why people are being manipulated, why there is such a huge effort by the elites to cause exactly what you're talking about. People like throwing up their hands in disgust, walking away. They can't agree on things. You see, the thing of it is the elites understand they cannot prevent awareness. Awareness happens when you look at something and say, what's wrong with this picture? And next thing you know, you're on a slippery slide to the Twilight Zone. Mm-hmm. And reality, it's literally, Matrix-esque red pill, blue pill moment. So what they're really interested in doing is to prevent consensus. They can't do anything about awareness, but they can prevent consensus. In other words, if enough people get together and start saying, yeah, I'm seeing the same thing, and it is, yes, it's a clear and present danger, and we need to organize and do something. The minute people want to organize and do something, all right, that changes the whole game completely.
Yeah.
I tell a little story that kind of illustrates the point. There's a small church out in the Midwest, and that Sunday morning, 300 people sitting in there, and they're having, praying together. And all of a sudden, an F5 tornado comes out of nowhere, hits the church, splinters it into 1,000 gajillion pieces, and all 300 people die immediately. They go up, there they are, the pearly gates, and the pastor walks up, and there's Peter, and Peter's got this kind of a frown on his face and going, well, we didn't expect this one, and we're having a problem right now. The plumbers are on strike. We're backed up on our production schedule. So we have a temporary housing situation. Can you work with me? And he says, sure. So Peter picks up the phone, calls down. It's the red line to hell. And the devil picks up, and Peter goes, Meph, this is Pete. I could use your help here for a few days. I've got 300 devout souls here perished, and but we can't put them up, so could we send this church group down to you for just 3 days, and then you'll send them back. And Meph says, sure. Professional courtesy.
Of course.
Send them down. So explains it to the pastor, who's not particularly keen on the idea, but is going to work with it. And they go down. And so there is Pete, and he's working out with the plumbers, and they're negotiating their contracts, and, he's got to get these folks up. On the second day, he gets a call from the devil. And this is like the cool demeanor is gone. All right? The devil is really tanked and twisted up. You could hear it in his voice, and he's going, Pete, you got to take these church people off my hands right now. Right now. Why? What's wrong? He says, well, they got here the first day to complain about the heat. Like, been there, done that. And he says, so? He says, well, this morning they had a fundraiser meeting. Guess what? They're putting out bids for air conditioning, and they're going to do the whole place. You got to get them out of here.
Oh, my God.
And so that is the power of consensus.
Yeah.
People mobilize, get together, they're going to do something. That's what threatens the elites. So with that in mind, let's go, and we're going to talk about Y2K. Because that's important. See, I hear this Y2K all the time. All right. Well, I was a consultant in the Silicon Valley. I was a senior technical writer, systems analyst, and I only worked on contract. My clients included companies like Oracle, Sun, Hewlett-Packard, Lockheed Martin, AT&T, and so forth. And I was a firefighter. I was the guy that they brought in for special projects. And I could fix things, get things turned around, do marketing, collateral, whatever. I got pulled into a Y2K project. And the thing is, what people in America didn't really understand was that companies were spending vast amounts of their IT budgets. I mean, literally, we could have financed a war in the Middle East for what was spent on Y2K remediation. And the thing was, people didn't see the real Achilles heel, the real danger. And it wasn't airplanes falling out of the sky or nuclear reactors going off. That was fear-mongering that was done actually by currency traders and gold and silver brokers. They were out selling gold and silver coins like crazy, with all kinds of wild-eyed, speculative scare stories. But in the computer industry, people understood what was really at stake, and it really was a titanic situation. And a lot of people, a lot of companies, and these are people that, they're conservative. They wear belts and suspenders. They don't throw their money away. And I worked on, Hewlett-Packard had me write a book for them, and I charged them like a lawyer for it. And they had they loved it. They paid, no problem. And what I had to do was explain the Achilles heel of the internet to people with checkbooks, because the perception amongst people that, barely could use AOL and Excel and that stuff was that if it happened, it would happen to everybody.
Right.
Well, no, it wouldn't. There would be those who'd be prepared and those who were not. And what I explained to them, the Achilles heel is the messaging system of the internet. For example, you go to the store, you get a box of cornflakes. You go up, you scan it, you buy it. Then it goes from the register to the backroom computer. The backroom computer talks to a regional office computer. That talks to a local wholesaler. The wholesaler talks to a distributor. The distributor talks to a jobber. The jobber talks to Kellogg's computer. And before you take your first spoonful of cornflakes in front of the TV, Kellogg's knows that they have to replace that box in that store. All right? Yeah. And all of this conversation happens automatically. It's called messaging system, because it's a real Tower of Babel out there. computers do not speak together very well unless you have some way of reconciling them, like Star Trek translators, all right? And the point was, if a company, and I had to write the book to explain to people who didn't understand what the risk was without actually saying what the risk was. It was a tricky book to write. But what I wrote showed somebody who read it after his, one of his technology officers said, "For God's sakes, please read this." And they could see that if they went down for Y2K compliance issues, it would take them weeks, months to get their systems back online. Well, it would be so easy to divert the traffic around them. And all they had to do is just simply point conversations to other computers that could have a conversation. And that was it. They would watch their entire market. All of their customers would go to their competitors just by virtue of the fact that there would be continuity of services.
Right.
And with the internet, if you're dependent on the internet for your business, you go down, you're offline for 3 days, you're dead.
Yeah.
Okay. So what they saw was their own mortality, and that book sold millions of dollars of computers for Hewlett-Packard.
Wow.
In development systems. And so there was a real risk. It was a Titanic that did not hit the berg. But what you did have were foul-mouthed demagogues, jerks, and idiots, and that were going on and saying, "We didn't have our disaster. Off with their heads. We wanted the disaster." And it's like, are you nuts? Are you crazy? You want to see half the trains in America sitting on sidings while everything's rotting? Mm-hmm. Total chaos, people tearing stores apart, National Guard out shooting people. You really want that? But, you go to, it was O'Reilly on Fox News. He was such a moron, a jerk, an idiot. He had no understanding of what was really at stake. Mm-hmm. And he was leading the charge. Off with their heads. We should prosecute them. We should do it. These people who spent all this money, put all this effort, all of these years, they should have been getting ticker tape parades. But you know what? That don't sell soap.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
So with Y2K, what you have was a panic created by a bunch of greedy gold and silver brokers and a media that couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if it was leaning against it. And what is the rest of it? Just like you said today, well, we had that Y2K nonsense. Mm-hmm. Wasn't nonsense. 2012 was not nonsense. All right? Now, I was interviewed in August of 2012 by National Geographic. And in that interview, the producer said, "Marshall, is there a direct correlation, a connection, between the Mayan calendar and Planet X?" And I said, "No. What we see is coincidental. We don't see any evidence of a direct correlation." Now, I'm going to tell you, I was wrong. But I was wrong for all the right reasons. 2012 was about Planet X. And how do we know this? Well, I'm a science geek. I always go for the science.
Uh-huh.
And I look for empirical data. Hard statistical trending data about earthquakes, volcanoes, weather madness, things like that. So, up to December 21, 2012, what was the empirical data? The only numbers you had to prove anything were the Arbitron ratings for the cable companies who were making a fortune. Okay?
Yeah.
It was a date-driven expectation event.
Yeah.
Now, good prophecy always comes with a harbinger. Because what's the point of having a prophecy that says, when this comes to pass, you're dying? I mean, the whole point of prophecy is when you see these signs, do something before the dying begins.
Exactly.
All right?
Yep.
Be a little proactive here. Well, that's the case here with December 21, 2012. What the Mayans were looking for was a specific celestial alignment to tell them that they would be entering an age of tribulation. How do we know this? We started looking at the empirical data post December 21, 2012, with specific regards to meteorites, fireballs, and earthquakes. And what we saw was a ballistic uptick, remember the old Roadrunner Coyote cartoons with the Acme rocket?
Loved it.
Zoom straight up.
Yeah.
Then it would go down, and Coyote would get flattened.
Yeah.
And that was the most elastic coyote I've ever seen. And he can take a beating, boy, I'll tell you.
Yeah, for sure.
But the thing here is that we started looking at the empirical data post, and it was explosive.
Wow.
And so what the Mayans were looking for was the harbinger sign to let them know it's time to prepare. It's going to be getting pretty tough. And this is what's coming down the road. And so the fact is there was a direct connection between Planet X and December 21, 2012. So in both cases, all right, you have all of this media hype, shoddy reporting. I mean, when I worked with CNN, it had a science department. It hasn't had a science department in over a decade. They don't do original investigative work anymore. They're just mouthpieces. And Larry King was right. It's become the Cartoon News Network. And
I love it.
And I say that with a sad heart, because when I was involved with CNN, it was a lean, mean news machine, and it was a real honor to be there and to work with them. But you have these two things where it's about perception, all right? So the two examples that you gave about, well, we've been there with Y2K, we're there with the Mayan calendar, it was all nonsense. Tell me something, Ari. Now that you know what you know, have you changed your mind on that?
No, I know that this stuff is real.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, if you felt that was a good rational explanation for Planet X being nonsense, then if you're staying with that, then what you're saying is, I don't care if I'm stupid.
Oh, no, of course.
I want to believe.
Of course.
Right,
sure.
Because the fact is, people cling to the bliss of ignorance, like jealous lovers. Mm-hmm. All right, and when I hear with Planet X, I hear people all the time say, well, if it really existed and was something this big and this terrible and all of that, our government would have to tell us.
Of course.
All right?
Yeah.
I ask them, I say, do you believe the government is always honest with us? And they say, well, of course not. I'm not stupid. But on this, they would have to believe us. Yeah. And when I hear them saying they would have to be honest with us, I envision a housewife washing her husband's shirt, finds 5 shades of lipstick on the collar, confronts him with it, and he says, honey, it's one woman. She just liked to try a lot of different lipsticks on, but it's over. You're the only one in my life. Yeah. And she goes, okay, I'll buy that.
Yeah.
All right, and it's like,
because you want to believe it. You believe what you want to believe at that point.
That's it. Yeah. You believe what you want to believe. Now, why is she believing it? Maybe she's believing it because we're saying, yeah, I'll buy that, and giving him a pass because she knows that the kids are going to wind up out of private schools. Exactly. The families, a divorce is going to destroy everything. And basically, she's got a horned dog for a husband and he's a lying SOB. Mm-hmm. Or, maybe she just really is dumb as sack as a hammers. I mean,
it could be.
So there's reasons for it, but he gets away. In other words, the lie prevails.
Sure.
All right? And what we have to understand is that there's a terrible lie prevailing now. Now, this is neurolinguistic programming. I want to go back. You used the term sundogs, did you not?
Yeah, I sure did.
Okay, do you realize that you are echoing neurolinguistic programming for the benefit of the elites? You've been a good soldier for them, Ari.
Yep.
Okay, and I'll tell you why. The term sundogs is unfamiliar to the vast majority of the United States because the only place you see sundogs is somewhere in a frozen wasteland like North Dakota or something. Okay? And people live out on the plain states. Minnesota in particular, they know what sundogs are because those are the conditions you need to create sundogs. All right? And sundogs look like a big circle in the sky. And they look nothing like Planet X observations. But what disinformationalists found was that sundogs was a catchy term.
Exactly. Yep.
And so the minute and what they did was they programmed everyone's mind. The minute you hear the word sundogs, all right, that's it. Turn off the brain. Nothing to see here. Move along. Worked beautifully. Worked beautifully. And it was from about 2008 to 2010, everything was sundog, 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 sundog.
Right.
Okay? Until the people in Minnesota and places like that who knew what sundogs were started going into social media sites and saying, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Here's what a sundog really is. Here's links to and they, in their own polite and persistent manner, explained to people who were being, just simply blown away with neurolinguistic programming, the real truth of it. And then the term died, and it only has infrequent use. Infrequent use. And you use it, it's a lasting bit of neurolinguistic programming that is stuck in your head. Now, why do people say things like sundogs? All right? Well, everyone, the power of disinformation is that those who disperse it have come to understand since World War II that you don't deny that there is disinformation. You don't touch it. You don't say it happens or doesn't. You leave that alone. Let people believe that there is disinformation. What they do is they program you to think you are you're smarter than the average bear. That you know there is NLP and propaganda and disinformation. You know all of this. You're smart. You're wise. But therefore, you can see it coming. You know when you're being played. All right? Now, I'll tell you what. People who think they're smarter than the average bear and they can recognize it and prevent it from touching their lives are the very ones who are infected septically with NLP, disinformation programming. All right?
Yep.
Now, for all of your cynics out there, chew on that.
Yep. And they're so clever, too. I mean, they have to let you know that, hey, I'm onto this. I'm clever.
Yeah, and it's, it reminds me of, remember City Slickers? Mm-hmm. In the sequel, Curly's Gold? And at the end that they learned that, the guys just printed up a bunch of maps. And that's it. That's all they do. They lead people down rabbit holes. Just what they want to do. Yeah. Is they want people to throw their hands up in the air and just say, it's all nonsense. Walk away. Yeah. All right? Or, at the very least, prevent them from having an intelligent conversation with someone else that, oh my God, there could be consensus.
Oh, that's right.
No, 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 no.
Yep.
No consensus.
Yeah.
All right. Now, why is that important? That's the question, Ari.
That is.
Why? Okay. You want to know why?
Definitely.
This is red pill, blue pill.
Okay. Let's do it.
You taking the red pill?
I want to know. I want
Okay.
to. I definitely want. I want to be in consensus.
All right. Well, here's why. We're going into a global cataclysm. We're going to have a pole shift, event, and right now we're pushing 7.5 billion souls on the planet. And as we speak, humanity is outstripping what Earth can renew. Mm-hmm. All right. By some estimates, we're consuming what the planet can give us by 3. So in other words, by taking from the planet what it can produce naturally in far greater demand, then we're depleting our basic resources.
Right.
And the viability of the planet to support a population. So what the elites are planning is population reduction. Now, have you ever heard of the Georgia Guidestones?
Sure.
All right. Nice little monument out there with essentially what people would call 10 commandments for the 21st century in 8 different languages. Mm-hmm. Number 1 is keep human population to under 500 million.
Right.
It doesn't tell us how we get there, does it?
No.
How do we get from 7.5 to 1/2? Well, remember the story of Noah? Why did Noah build the ark on the side of a mountain?
Yeah.
So the tsunami wave would ebb and gently lift it off and bring it out. Mm-hmm. Okay. Location is everything. And if you can keep people stupid, arrogant, and confident in their own hubris, they're going to stay where they're going to stay.
Sure.
And the vast majority of humanity lives along a shoreline or near to it. Mm-hmm. And so consequently, the tsunamis that are going to occur from impact events and the pole shift are going to eradicate the majority of humanity. And the reason why that's going to work and work so successfully is that people are being manipulated and lied to intentionally. You know, I hear the question all the time, when am I going to see it with my own 2 eyes?
Right.
Well, that question is as dumb as a sack of hammers.
Right.
It's dumb, stupid, idiotic. Because there's a right question.
Yeah.
The right question is, when will I believe that what I am seeing with my own 2 eyes is a clear and present danger? That is the right question. But people are going to be asking the dumb as a sack of hammers question.
Right.
When am I going to see it with my own 2 eyes? In other words, I'm seeing it, but please, for God's sakes, lie to me.
Right.
I don't want it to be what I think it's going to be.
Exactly.
So what will happen is when we see the Planet X system coming out from behind the sun, it's going to look like a red comet. And it'll be very easy for the government to come on with, folks that know better, and then they'll have their cherry-picked conspiracy theorists who are actually their own people.
Of course.
Presenting themselves as independent sources.
Of course.
And what are they going to say? It's just going to be an interesting light show.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bumpiness, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Then they'll that takes us back to the 5 shades of lipstick on the collar.
Exactly right.
People are going to say, okay, I buy it. But then more serious things are going to begin happening. And people are going to be desperately clinging to hope, like drowning mice to straw. Mm-hmm. All right? And then the last time they're going to have any authority or credibility with the people, they're going to say something like, well, we've been monitoring it, and things have changed unpredictably and unbeknownst to us. And, yes, we're having more trouble, but we're confident that this will pass without any further inconvenience. And just have faith in that, and make sure you got your 3-day supply of flashlight batteries and water.
Mm-hmm. Like that movie Melancholia.
Right. Yeah, it'll be Melancholia. Yep. And people will buy it because they're going to be desperate for false hope.
Yep.
And this is where the whole, they couldn't lie to us about something this big. Logic is going to be what leads them to their death. Sure. And so people, I see all of this neuro-linguistic programming, mm-hmm. disinformation, propaganda, and I see it, I read it like matrix code. Okay? You read my site, I post articles, and I explain to people what's being done. All right? How disinformation is being used. How people are being attacked. All right?
Right.
And I will tell you what. Those articles are largely ignored. I put them up because I feel it is important mm-hmm. that people understand how they're being duped.
Sure.
But this disinformation campaign is so large, so pervasive, and so successful. People are just not interested. Again, remember, they're going back to, well, yeah, it exists, but I'm smarter than the average bear, and I'll see it coming. Yeah. And so most people won't read the articles. But I lay out the strategies. I've been doing that for years. Yeah. And I do it, I call them integrity pieces, because they don't really generate much of any traffic to the site. But I just feel a moral obligation to expose the methods so that people, if they're interested, they can see how they're being manipulated. But the bottom line is there's no point in, wailing and beating our chests and screaming and getting upset. This victory is already achieved.
Yeah.
Vast majority of humanity is already walking dead. They're on the coast. They're going to stay on the coasts, and they're going to die on the coasts. Yeah. The people that are going to be in awareness and to survive the initial events are far and few in between. And but you do what you can for those you can.
Right.
There it is.
Yeah. Well. What I'd like to see if we could do is for those that have some awareness, because they're probably, a lot of them are gauging, and a lot of them are asking me in my site, the 2012emergence.com site. They're asking me, okay, well, I need to prepare, but when do I start doing this? I was like now.
Yeah. I mean, if you tell somebody, here's the date, mm-hmm. this is when the day the world's life as we know is going to end.
Yeah.
What they do is they mark it on the calendar, and at that point, they glue their tuchus to procrastination, and it goes no further.
That's right.
Other than to say, okay, I'm going to look at my credit card billing cycles, figure out the optimal day, and just before it goes, I'm going to run out to Sam's Club and Walmart and Costco, and I'm going to empty zap out the cards and get everything and come away, clever, and I beat all the other fools out, and, let them stand in line and so forth. And so the fastest way to get people to stop doing any planning and preparation is to give them what they ask for, which is a date. Because, see, again, what they really want is to defer, to deny, to extend.
Sure.
They don't want to face it. And that's the truth of it.
Well, the other thing is you give them a date and it doesn't happen exactly on that day. Well, there you go. I told you.
You know, they do that. Louis Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. Mm-hmm. All right? And I believe that to be so.
Yeah.
People are going to see it. They're going to be in awareness or not. So that gets me to the question of, you know, how are you going to prepare? If you're asking me, give me a date, then I'm going to be honest with you. You're wasting my time and yours. Mm-hmm. Just go to the mall, go shopping, forget about all of this.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, just do what, groupthink is telling you to do in your neuro-linguistic programming, and think that you're clever, you know better, and that's it.
But there's enough evidence, too.
And then, you know, may the odds be in your favor.
Exactly. Yeah, it will be Hunger Games, but... Yeah. But there is enough evidence, I believe, that we can say, well, this is not normal. Like you were saying, that there's an escalation of earthquakes. We're seeing volcanic activity every day now.
It's really, really intense. We put up on our site, yowusa.com or marshallmasters.com, we got signs, update number 5. We track all of this. Mm-hmm. This is like a 14-page article.
Yeah, I read it. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
Yep.
It's an encyclopedic view of everything that's going on. See, and I'm keenly aware of with my media, is that on a local level, there is superb and professional on a local level. Mm-hmm. The problem is when these news stories start filtering upwards into the mainstream arena. And what they do is all the mainstream sites are methodically and consistently diminishing these stories. They're doing anything they can to trivialize them, rationalize them away with nonsense. The basic goal is they don't want people to connect the dots. All right? That is dangerous to the elites, because when people are connecting the dots, that's when you have consensus.
Right.
Consensus is not good for business.
Yeah.
All right? And so, you know, when you're looking at it, you're just going to have to decide, you know, am I going to let someone else do my thinking for me? Or am I going to think for myself? It's my life. Now, there are those that I talk with who are in awareness. And you talk with those who are in awareness. Mm-hmm. All right?
Yeah.
And these are not the ones who are sitting on the fence. People sitting on the fence are dealing in what I call perception. They're not dealing in awareness. Perception is purely physical, material view of it. Now, perception is effective because this is how all of the intelligence agencies in the world operate. They look out there and they're saying, in our trending data, where are we seeing possible threats? All right? And when they see a possible threat, then they will define a threshold for it, at which point, when it crosses that threshold, they know that they have to take action in some way or form to prepare for it. Whereas most people are looking for smoking guns. Mm-hmm. Because planning and preparation, getting ready for something like this is, I call it busting a move, because you really do have to bust up your life. And people are looking at all of the inconvenience of that. And so they're wanting, you know, some way to intellectually deny, defer, evade, extend, but they don't want to take the bull by the horns.
Yeah.
So that's expensive, personally, financially, and many other ways. And that's what happens here. You have that going on. But people who are in awareness, most of them tend to be between 45 to 65, and in most cases they've been in awareness since they were children.
Sure, yeah. There's no doubt. Now, there's a group of people, and I don't know if we should call them, they're in awareness. They're in the spiritual path, all right? And a lot of them come from that New Age philosophy mentality that will say something like, well, you guys are just negative. You're just into negativity. That's one of the buzzwords that is used. On top of that, you're into fear, another buzzword they use. And whatever you're focusing on, you're going to obviously bring it into your own reality. So, and I'm thinking to myself, well, gee, that sounds like a bunch of disinformation right there. You sound like you're working for the Cabal. Well, are you really spiritual? Are you sure?
Okay, now
so
let me tell you something.
What do you say about that?
All right, these people, we call them manifestors. Mm-hmm. All right, it's denial logic, no different than people who feel that they have some sort of religious exemption, like rapture theory. Uh-huh. They're just the people who are saying this. Keep in mind, talk to these people who are manifestors and are saying, well, if you're manifesting this, you're thinking about it, you're going to make it happen. Mm-hmm. Ask them, what did you think about Y2K? What did you think about December, the Mayan calendar, December 21, 2012? And if they tell you, well, that was all nonsense, nothing ever happened, and blah, 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 and all kinds of dismissive, arrogant logic, then these people are septic with neuro-linguistic programming.
Right.
They, in terms of being rational thinkers, as far as they're concerned, that boat has sailed. All right?
Yeah.
So, can you manifest things? I believe you can. In my book, Crossing the Cusp, and in Being in It for the Species, I talk about something called an intention vortex. Mm-hmm. And we literally could mitigate the severity of this flyby if we come together collectively as a species to create a very powerful intention and focus it.
Right.
But there are limits to what we can do, and in an intention vortex, moving a planet or a brown dwarf star out of its orbit, forget about it. Okay? Forget about it. We don't have that much juice.
Yeah.
But we could take an unstable moon and further exacerbate its unstable orbit, and then it would have, like a lever, it would have leverage on the planet, its orbit, and cause it to make a small change in its orbit around in its own trajectory, which would in turn mitigate the severity of the effects of the flyby. And so I firmly believe we have that power of intention. And I've presented that in 2 books. But by sitting here and saying we're manifesting, I'm going to tell you that actually, and I have this from reliable sources, this whole insanity of manifestation was invented by our own intelligence agencies.
Wow.
Okay?
Yep.
And it was just milked out there. And it was just say, fine. No problem. With the Christians, they can get them on rapture theory. And I'm sure there are people out there that are just bristling right now. Mm-hmm. Okay? But I mean, face it. Rapture theory, if it was really coherent, why is it like Baskin-Robbins with 31 flavors?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
And every one of them saying the other ones are crazy. Mm-hmm. This is exception thinking. But in a larger perspective, it's denial thinking. So while they're arguing rapture theory amongst themselves, you have the New Agers who bought into this CIA nonsense of manifesting. It's fear porn, fear-based.
Yep.
You know, how about just simply looking at the world with an open eye?
Yeah.
But, you know, as I was saying, look at the manipulation as well. If we had a media that was actually reporting the news, a mainstream media, you wouldn't have this nonsense with manifesting, because enough people would be seeing what's really happening to the planet today, and they would be saying, what's wrong with this picture?
Exactly.
We don't need this happy yada, okay?
Yeah.
So, you know, you have the folks and the ones that are the manifestors, and you know what? I lived in Santa Cruz, I lived along a coastline. This is where you see this prevailing attitude. You don't see it like that in the flyover states. And it's all going to serve the elites very well, because all these people who are saying, you're manifesting this, are going to drown like rats when the tsunamis hit them.
Yeah.
That's it. So at that point...
And it's a shame. It's really a shame, because they've gotten so far in embracing a lot of really good concepts spiritually, and then they fall so short. They fall short from that goal line. You know, with these concepts that they're so it's so embedded in them via false spiritual information that they've embraced, because a lot of it is convenience. You know, it's not convenient for me to look at something like that, because I do have to uproot myself. I do have to kind of spend X amount of dollars to get myself and my family out. Or yes, I have to exhaust myself in trying to convince my in-laws or my spouse or my children, hey, something is coming down the pike and it's not going to be a pretty sight if we stay here. It's exhausting. And so a lot of us, you know, we embrace those concepts and say, well, first of all, we're immortal. Our soul. We're not afraid of death. You're in fear. So they use the word "you're in fear," so that you don't tell them about information that it's so unbelievable and so hard to cope with. So they'll say you're in fear, because in reality they're in fear. And they can't handle it.
Yeah, well, I mean, their message basically is what you hear from Italian grandmothers. Hey, shut up, you face.
Right.
I know, I heard that.
Oh, yeah.
And they don't want to hear it. It's, they put the hands over the ears, and it's la, 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 and I don't want to hear it. And that's what they're doing, so... and there's really no way to break through that wall. Denial is incredibly powerful. And so, again, I'm saying, fine, let's do the doable. Who can we reach? Who can we help? Mm-hmm. All right? I agree with you. It's just an awful thought to think that all of these people are going to be dying violent, horrible deaths, and they're not going to know what's happening to them until the day they're dying, and then they're really not going to understand it. If you watch the movie 2012, produced in 2010,
sure.
What was interesting was we had come out with our book Planet X Forecast in 2012 Survival Guide. And we were approached by the second largest publisher in Japan. And they licensed the Japanese language edition of our book. And they offered us an immensely lucrative license. And of course, it may be dumb, but I'm not stupid. I took it. All right?
Yeah.
And it helped me, that I used the profits on that to get a small studio set up so I could do videos.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it because Sony was producing 2012, and the big companies over there, they back room and back channel with each other. So they knew that the first release of 2012, which would be a summer release because it was a blockbuster, the causality in the movie was going to be Planet X. That was what was going to cause the original 2012 movie scenario. All right?
Wow.
And what happened was, when the information came out and the elites understood that, huge pressure came down on Sony. And they had to recut the film to eliminate the Planet X aspects. And that's the reason why it was released, I believe, in November of that year. During what? Independent films, Harold and Maude's kind of time. This is those, weird winter films that we get. Okay? Not a blockbuster where they could really make a ton of money with it.
Yeah.
Now, and you look at the beginning of the movie, and what you see is they had to shift the scenario. And if you look at how that unfolds, it's kind of choppy.
That's true.
All right?
Yeah.
Now, next time you watch 2012, the very first seconds of the movie, Emmerich flipped the finger. He, at the very beginning, just momentary flash, he shows the original footage showing Nibiru.
Wow.
Okay? And what he did in that film, what I thought was brilliant, was all the, it was a lot of visual eye candy, of course, Meanwhile, with all the candy, you had people like myself that lived through a major quake. I was in 1989 Loma Prieta. And, everybody that's been through a quake is looking at this and they're going, let's see, they're having, a magnitude God knows what event, and they're having a conversation in the car.
Right.
It's
typical Hollywood.
Typical Hollywood, let your imagination go away from you.
Right.
And so you have all the eye candy. As a matter of fact, I was so annoyed by the eye candy, I almost wanted to, I wanted to go and get my money back.
Yeah.
It just stinks, But I kind of thought about it that night, thought about the film, and then I said, am I missing something here? So I went back a couple of days later during a matinee, because I sure was not going to pay full pop for that again.
Yeah.
And I watched and I realized the subtext was brilliant. Because what he did was get rid of all the eye candy, so you got to watch the movie a couple of times to do that. Mm-hmm. But when you do that, he shows you the subtext. He shows you how the elites think.
Wow.
And how they view themselves. And how they view the rest of us. And what do you see in that movie? Everybody in the world is dying, and they don't know why. Because the knowledge has been so carefully suppressed.
Yep.
All right? And I'm going to tell you, that movie lays it out exactly. He put the game plan right up front and center. And not that people are going to pay notice to it.
Right.
They're just going to say, well, that was an entertaining movie.
Yeah, it was a great movie. Some great special effects, oh, wow,
Yeah, that was cool. Okay, let's go get cheesecake,
Right. Yeah. Very, very weird. What do you think about, God, what's his fellow's name? Major Ed Dames, is that his name? The remote viewer expert?
Yeah.
That he's seeing, his group has been seeing that kill shot. Mm-hmm. And that is apparently, let's see, actually the movie which is called Knowing with Nicolas Cage, addressed the kill shot. But this guy, Major Ed Dane's team, is actually now saying that the kill shot is due to Planet X now.
Well, I'm glad to hear that he's able to do that, and I actually have a copy of his first video, The Kill Shot, which he did in 2004, I believe, or 2005.
I didn't know it was that old.
And yeah, it was that old.
Wow.
The very first one, he's got new ones, but
okay.
the first one, he was living in Hawaii and was going to go, ended it with his surfboard or something like that. Because the surf's up, it's Hawaii, and all that.
Yeah.
You see him watching, and he's talking about it. Well, I put that in my library. I watched it back then. Didn't think twice about it because I wasn't that far along in my own research. But I've always had a lot of respect for Ed Dame's work, and he does remote viewing. And so let me explain a little bit of difference between channeling and remote viewing, psychic channeling.
Awesome.
Both techniques are used by American and Russian intelligence agencies and others as well. The difference between psychic channeling and remote viewing is you can train a large number of people to do it, and it's relatively safe for the experiencer. Whereas psychic channeling is something you have to have people that have a natural gift, and there are other concerns that you have to be careful with, because you can get slammed by dark spirits if you're not really watching what you're doing. Now, in the United States, the preference is for remote viewing, and in Russia, the preference is for psychic channeling. They use both. In our research at Yowza.com, we use psychic channeling, so we follow the Russian model.
Okay.
And with remote viewing, what you're doing, Ed Dames calls it the Matrix. You could also call it the Akashic Record. But that's what you're really doing, is you're mentally viewing into that space. And so they can go anywhere in time, and he can see things. Remote viewing is very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful, okay? And it is most powerful kung fu, grasshopper. And
oh my God. Wax on, wax off.
Wax on, wax off, yeah. Oh, there, I love it. I love it. All right. It's wax on, wax off.
Exactly. Yeah.
A friend of mine up in the Northeast, Gloria, said, Ed's giving a remote viewing seminar, and I said, well, I can't afford that. Those are $400, $500, $600 or something. And she said, okay, well, let me see about that.
Oh, wow.
And an anonymous donor paid my enrollment fee, the full thing. And I never even got a name,
Wow.
And I was able to send a thank you card and a book back through channels, but I was graciously, given this opportunity to go do the remote viewing class and learn it as a technique. And I did that because I really wanted to see if remote viewing would be useful for survival purposes.
Oh, yeah.
And it is. Absolutely. And I would say to those people who want to go into to learn about channeling, develop that kind of ability for themselves, a good place to start is remote viewing, because it's going to give you necessary discipline in a safe way. And from there you could go into the psychic channeling, but also that's something where you this is not a home study course you do on your own. You really need to have a mentor, someone who takes you through the process.
Yeah.
In my case, it was a Native American shaman who taught me in the Native American style of the medicine wheel, and I was very fortunate for that.
Definitely.
But you have these two techniques, and what he was doing in the class, a lot of people there most of the people attending that class were in awareness. They were really interested in using it for that very purpose, to find some place to locate themselves and so forth. Well, at the end of the first break, I had a copy of my book, Being in It for the Species, and I walked up and handed it to Ed, and I said, "Hi, I'm Marshall Masters," and Ed looked at me and he said, "I've heard your name a lot."
You get around.
Yeah, get around, been there, done that,
Yeah.
And so I guess I'm becoming the Mae West of Planet X.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. Well, somebody has to do it.
somebody has to do it.
Somebody's got to do the dirty work. Yeah.
Somebody's got to do it. So, Ed, I looked at Ed and I said, "Ed, last night, for the first time in 10 years, I watched your original kill shot video." I said, "I want you to know, now that I know what I know, talking in broad strokes, you nailed it. You nailed it."
Yeah.
And he looked at me, and he was sad, and he said, I have no pleasure in hearing that.
That's right. That's pretty bad.
And I had no pleasure in saying it. And it was a moment where we both looked at each other and, understanding what it really means. And so Ed Dames he's really doing a Herculean job to get the message out. And I congratulate him for that. And what he's telling, for your benefit of your listeners out there, is that his remote viewing teams have been now for over a decade consistently viewing the same thing. They were going forward in time and remote viewing the area around Washington, D.C., particularly like Congress and the Supreme Court. And what they were seeing was the Supreme Court building under about 200 feet of brackish water.
Ooh.
Okay. And, a lot of devastation. Now, the kill shot that he talks about is what he is seeing is a solar storm erupting from the sun as a large body, a large planet passes between Earth and the sun, that a large solar storm occurs and the Earth is devastated. Now, what his remote viewers are seeing is what's called a solar sprite. And here on Earth, what you would call it is ground lightning.
Wow.
Now, ground lightning is far more powerful than sky-based lightning. Far more than atmospheric lightning. I mean, it's like by an order of magnitude more powerful. You get hit by ground lightning, that's it.
Wow.
You're not going to wake up and then start talking to God. You're just simply going to be a pile of dust. All right? Well, when you have this large planet passing between Earth and the sun, all right, it's going to create an interaction in the sun, and there's going to be a solar sprite. And if that solar sprite hits us, it's Earth directed, it'll be devastating. Wow. And I think examples of solar sprites that have happened during previous flybys, they tell me the Grand Canyon was created by a stream or a river. It's like, I've been down the Grand Canyon. I keep going, what's wrong with this picture?
What's wrong with this explanation?
But, okay, so let's leave the Grand Canyon aside. Let's talk about Val Marineris. That's the largest in the solar system on Mars. And now what it looks like is it got smashed and gouged. All right? Now, you were talking about the movie Knowing with Nicolas Cage. And the reason why I think that the elites are digging in with DUMBs, deep underground military bases, 2 miles underground, is to survive a solar sprite.
So you don't think it has anything to do with everything else that Planet X brings with it? You know, the waves, the water, the meteorites. You think it's more solar related?
Well, there's going to be many reasons. Your threat matrix is going to have a lot of elements to it.
Sure.
Right? But you have the dominant, the overarching element, and that would be the solar sprites, the kill shot that Ed Dames is seeing.
Okay.
And so that's what they're really worried about. What's throwing the elites for what's really putting a monkey wrench in the works for them right now is that they didn't anticipate sinkholes.
Oh, yeah.
Not on the scale that we're having now. And you have a sinkhole open up under one of your deep underground bases. I don't care how secure it is.
Yeah.
Arrivederci Roma, toots.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Pack it in.
Talk about buried alive there, I tell you.
Yeah. And, not that those of us left on the surface are going to shed a lot of tears on that.
Well, speaking of that, which brings up a good point. Now, with solar sprites and all this other stuff happening, how does anybody survive on the surface?
You survive a 10-year tribulation with spiritual strength. I know that it's intuitive for everyone to think about beans, bullets, and bunkers. All right?
Right.
What I have come to understand is that that's really an ego-driven viewpoint. And there are two different ways that you're going to enter into this, ego-driven or spirit-driven. If you're ego-driven, you're saying something like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know sure as hell I got to be the boss.
Yeah.
That's ego-driven. Spirit-driven, what you're saying is, it's not about holding on to things. It's about holding on to each other. And that is going to be the winning view of it. You have people that are, over the years, the top 2%ers have been building their bunkers. I know. I've had a lot of conversations with them, and, when they contact me, what they're really looking for is validation of a choice they've made in terms of where they situate their bunkers. And their bunkers are very expensive. I mean, entry level is $500,000. Entry level.
Wow.
Oh boy. These are $1 million on up. Fully deluxe underground condominiums, 2 years of food, water, fuel, the whole 9 yards. Problem is that we're looking at a tribulation that's going to go 10 to 12 years. And so at some point, you've got to come up from underground to the surface above, and that's when you're going to be a stranger in a strange land.
Yeah.
And what will happen is there are going to be some pretty nasty human beings running around, and they are going to smell your healthy, nourished body from up to a mile away, and when they do, you're going to die badly.
Yeah.
That's why I call them bunker bunnies. All right?
Yeah.
And all they are going to be is a tail-end food source devolved human beings. So who survives? Well, it's going to be communities of 100 or more.
Yeah.
Because now you're going to have enough bodies, enough firepower to do things, to be effective. And here's where, I get to what I'm doing in my mission now with people who are in awareness. Because people in awareness are always telling me, why in the hell am I aware if I can't afford to do anything about it? Now, in a material sense, that's practical.
Sure.
But that's not the reason why these folks are in awareness. It's not their mission. They're seeing it the wrong way. Their mission is to be teachers, mentors, and comforters. Because there's going to be a lot of people coming into awareness. And so what you're doing as someone who is in awareness and has been for most of your life, you've had the luxury of time to process it. It's like, the stages of grief. It takes you time to cycle through it. And so people who are in awareness have that time. People who are going to be coming into awareness as they are literally dying, watching people die, are going to be mortified, stupefied. This is intentional. This is what the elites want. People who are, don't have no idea how to process what's in the world around them are not going to see the threats coming.
Sure.
And they're not prepared. Good example was the Sumatra superquake of 2004 and the tsunami.
Right.
Look at who did the dying. Now, if you look at who did the dying and you go, did it happen to the ignorant natives, as we call them? No, because their folklore is telling them that when the ground shakes, it's the big turtle walking, and you've got to run uphill.
Right, move to higher ground.
To go worship the hill, you got to go to the top of the turtle to pray for forgiveness or whatever their folklore is. Bottom line is, when that quake hit, the ignorant, stupid natives, as we call them, were running uphill screaming, "Feet don't fail me now."
That's right. Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And all of us with the jobs, the money, the education, the nice homes, the 401ks, the IRAs, all the intelligent, the rapture theory, the manifestation theory, all of us clever people, what are we doing? We're standing there going, "Look, Harriet, all those fish are stranded. Let's get a basket and pick them up. Free lunch."
Oh, my God.
All right? So, pride goeth before the fall.
Yeah.
And, that's going to be the case. So those are, wild animals and ignorant natives, none of them died. None of them.
Yeah.
All of us intelligent human beings and our domesticated animals, we died like flies.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay? We drowned like rats. It was terrible. So, same thing's going to be happening during this, and you're going to have this, oh my God, this stunned, deer in the headlights kind of moment. Well,
exactly.
That's the reason why you're going to need people in awareness to help them through it. And, the last time you and I got together, and the interview, and you sent it to me, you had it up on YouTube, and I actually posted that on my website with an article about Alex Jones.
Yeah.
Who has now...
He's a believer.
Planet X. Huh?
I think he's a believer now.
Oh yeah,
right?
No, he's come into, there's 5 stages of awareness. Mm-hmm. I have on my site, if you go to the videos link, you'll see 5 stages of awareness. This is for people who are in awareness. This is the most popular video I've ever done of all of my videos. And my YouTube channel is pushing 18 million views today.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Wow.
And but this is the one that those who really know, they love the most. 5 stages of catastrophism. And the 5 stages are, I don't have time for this crap. That's stage 1. Stage 2, oh crap. Stage 3, share the crap.
Yeah.
Oh, that's where people really get into trouble. That's where they start falling off Christmas card lists.
Yeah.
And then there's 4, crap happens. You're resigned to your loneliness and awareness. And then stage 5 The universe is unfolding as it is, and you're starting to have a cosmic view of what's coming.
Sure.
All right? And that's really important. So I just see people, I think last time we talked about Knowledge Mountain.
Yeah.
The church started with Jennifer, non-denominational teaching church, and it's just for people who are in awareness stage. And what we're getting is people coming in, they're stage 4, stage 5.
Yeah.
We don't have 1, 2s, and 3s. Well, you never have 1s. Right. And the reason why 3 is really bad is that's where everybody's going to go, it's coming! Yeah. That's what they're talking to. Yeah. They're talking to stage 1 who are going, shut up, you face!
That's right. Yeah, and then when they see it's coming, their knees are buckling.
Yeah,
They're in such a state of fear that they're in a state of paralysis. They can't do anything, even if they wanted to at that point.
That's right. And I'm looking at Alex Jones, and he's definitely full-on early stage 2.
Yeah, that's right.
He's definitely in oak crap.
Yeah.
And so that was the reason why, I know that there's folks that follow it, and they're a little skeptical of him reversing on this because he's been a Planet X denier for so long. But I look at it and I said, okay, if my in life, as I'm in awareness, is to be a teacher, a mentor, an interpreter, then, cynical, some barbs at him, like, well, you blah, blah, telling people their laugh or something. Yeah. And I'm just saying, hey, give the guy some distance to sort this thing out and acknowledge the fact that it took a hell of a lot of courage.
It did, yeah, it did.
To reverse course, take the hit for it, so I acknowledged it for that.
Yeah, but I think that his take on Planet X is now based on the Caltech discovery by Michael Brown of the Planet 9 situation, where it might not be such an imminent threat because it's so far away. And I don't know. I mean, I don't. My question is Alex embracing the true situation with Planet X, or is he embracing the disinformation stuff that is being disseminated at this point? That's the question. Well,
it was interesting. I had somebody that follows him closely, and the way I found out about it was they said he made this announcement, and he also had some links for Planet X, and he said one of them was to an interview you gave to on a show late last year with a gal out of Hawaii, where it was a no-holds-barred show. Huh. And so I thought it was interesting, but I think what he's having, and what I point out in the article, in our interview, is in that article, and I think there's what I call a moment of conscience, and this is what comes with awareness. Perception is one thing. Awareness transcends perception.
Yeah.
With really a material, with awareness, it's more active and spiritual.
Yeah. Your communication is coming in and out a little bit. It's kind of like garbled. So
okay.
I just want to make sure that you that you're aware of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Right. And just move a little closer to the mic and let me know if this helps.
Okay.
And so he was, what he had, which is early awareness. When you do come into awareness, all right, it's no longer arm's length. You can't wait and see.
No longer at arm's length, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, okay. No longer at arm's length.
Okay.
And I think he had that moment. And when you understand that, then you also, anyone who's in the media understands that there is a massive amount of media manipulation to suppress the knowledge of what is really going on because of this a deadly agenda to eliminate a vast majority of the human species.
Right.
All right. The elites want to do this because, look, no planet is going to smash into Earth, and we're not all going to die.
Right.
Humanity will endure. We will rebuild. We will go to the stars. The question is how.
Right.
Okay? Now, what the elites want for us is a Hunger Games world. And we go to the stars in conquest like Avatar. So Hunger Games Avatar, that's the world that the elites want for us. What we want is a Star Trek future.
Sure.
Okay? And I believe we can have it. I think, that's our manifest destiny.
Yeah.
And see, the thing is, the elites, the story of humankind is like a big book of many, many chapters. And all chapters, like all books, come to an end.
Right.
This chapter belongs to the elites. It's theirs. There's nothing we could possibly do or say to take it away from them, so don't try. But the next chapter is not theirs, and they know that. It's ours. The next chapter is a clean slate for the next civilization. All right?
Which is a great thing for us, thinking, okay, well, because we really don't even know or have the wherewithal to be able to fight these elites exactly for the same reason you're saying. It is their chapter. It belongs to them. They've got, all the know-how. They've got all the bullets. They've got all the tanks. They've got everything. And, we are in the majority, but we don't have the tactical skills or the things that we need to overcome them somehow. And some of them just don't have the backbone. But I think that...
But do you know what we do have?
Well, we got Planet X.
No, we got God.
We got
the elites don't believe in God.
Oh, God, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We do.
Yep.
And God wants us to, and I'm talking again, born hard geek, live long and prosper, logic is tweeting bird. Mm-hmm. But this really is about spiritual survival. It is about walking humbly with our God. Okay? And that's what's going to give us. It is our spirit that is going to give us the strength to endure. People who come at this purely from a material, elitist viewpoint, a lot of them, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to lay their heads down at night, and the last thing on their lips is going to be a prayer. Dear God, I'm so tired of this life. Please take me in my sleep. Mm-hmm. You know what? If they've led a good life and they've earned it, maybe that'll happen. Yep. But if there's still something left for them to learn, they're going to wake up in the morning and it's another day in hell.
Well, that's what a lot of people are telling me. Yeah, a lot of people are saying, I don't even want to live in a world like that.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. But if they're lucky, there'll be someone in awareness who will help them and comfort them.
Exactly.
So that they can get on their feet and get after it and take on the day. Carpe diem.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
This is not about holding on to things, Ari. It's about holding on to each other.
You got it. Yep.
That is going to be the big strength. And so what I see, is the time that there was for what I would call, a calm, timely planning and building shelters, sustainable communities, rapid deployment. That time's pretty much come and gone. Mm-hmm. Now, what are we looking at? What's the last window of opportunity for saving lives? All right. That is going to be from, earlier I talked about the media would give us a nothing to see here, don't worry about us pitch. And then when people are really starting to doubt that, they're going to say, well, we've followed new developments and blah, 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 and give us that last benefit of the doubt. So it's from nothing to see here to last benefit of the doubt. It's going to be that slice of time. Mm-hmm. Now, during that slice of time, there will be people who are going to go, you know what, I think it's time to they're lying to us. And it's time for us to, do something. to come to consensus and work together. Now, again, there's going to be an awful lot of people who are going to just hang on to what they're hearing because they really don't want, in their guts, they're going to feel what's coming. They're going to know that, but they don't want that to be true. Tell me it ain't so. Tell me the 5 shades of lipstick mean nothing on your color.
Well, it's got to be your worst nightmare. I mean, this has got to be the worst. I don't even think Hollywood does it justice.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
And so what I see is that churches, faith-based organizations, are going to be the most successful. Now, it's not very well known. It is documented that there is an unofficial clergy program the government's running where the clergy have to, when they join the program, sign a very tight non-disclosure. But their role will be to tell their congregations, trust the government. All right? So they're going to be echoing this as part of this program. And unfortunately, these religious people are, through their own naive desire to know that we can still trust the government. Now, because it's not that we have, our government is like a big family, loving uncles, stern aunts, and a cousin out in the woodpile who likes to kill everything with an axe.
Right.
And there's a lot of wonderful people in government that really care and want to be in service. But the problem with our government is we don't own it anymore. Mm-hmm. Our government's been stolen from us.
Sure.
All right. And, I saw that this summer. And I think people are realizing that. We were driving cross country, and when we got back, my fiance said, we saw more American flags on the sides of chemical plants than we did on T-shirts.
That's pretty sad.
It is. It is. But churches are going to have a unique advantage. 3 of them. First, an established chain of command. Are they political? Of course they are. Everything's political. But they're going to have an established chain of command. The second thing is that the churches have a good history of being able to marshal people and resources very quickly in a disaster. It can take them 3 decades to build a library, but it can take them 3 days to respond to a natural disaster. People get motivated, get together, they get going.
Or build an air conditioning unit in hell.
That's it, air conditioning unit in hell. Okay. And then the third thing is a diversity of skill sets, which is really important. And so you're in a house of prayer, and the person in front of you is a dentist, to your right is a sanitation worker, to the left is an office worker, so forth. But these people also have related liaison interests. That office worker could be a ham radio operator and knows all the local hams. The sanitation worker could be studying for homesmithing, or gunsmithing, and knows everybody in local shooting clubs at the ranges. They have a lot of connections, a lot of contacts, and so you have a tremendous amount of human networking to your advantage with faith-based organizations. Yeah. So consequently, they'll be able to, with leadership that is saying, okay, I'm not going to take the party line. I'm going to get my flock the hell out of here and to safety, and we will survive and we will thrive. And these communities are going to be the ones that are going to be the most enduring. They're going to have the ability to get through this. And for the one huge reason is that they will be faith-based.
Right.
They will draw on their strength and their will to survive with their relationship with God.
Absolutely.
So that's going to be a powerful group. That's a big reason why I formed Knowledge Mountain with Jennifer, so that we could interact with churches, all right, on an interfaith basis, as opposed to being a for-profit corporation, which is, that's an uneasy alliance.
Definitely.
But if it's one church to another church, and we're able to help them because our mission is a teaching mission, then that's where we want to go.
Right. Is your church is it online? Is it on internet based, or do you actually have people joining you in the physical in a certain location?
We're not a physical location.
Okay.
We are online at knowledgemountain.org, and we're online, and we have scheduled meetings and a community board. So there is, for those that are coming in, we do ask them to fill out a questionnaire, and we do treat it as a gated community. We want to make sure that the people who are coming in are genuine, and so we have a process that enables us to qualify them, to make sure that once they do come into the community, that they're going to be a brother or sister in awareness. Definitely. That's what's really important to us, and that's what we're getting. We're very pleased with how the church is growing, and the folks that are coming in and getting involved. And the big thing that I want for people to understand with awareness, and for those of you out there in awareness and have been in awareness for years, and you're tormented because a lot of you are isolated and alone. Odds are, 80% of you are in marriages with spoiler spouses who are threatening you with divorce if you don't stop talking and thinking about it. And I understand how that goes. My ex was, threatened me with divorce, and I was the one who filed. And I found out 95% of the time it's the person in awareness who files. They're not the one who makes the threats, right. But they are the one who files, because after a while you go, Diana, enough already.
Right.
I want some peace of mind.
That's right. Yeah.
And but then, the interesting thing is those that do find their mission spouse, as I did with Jennifer.
Yeah.
And it's truly amazing. So,
and life does go on.
Life goes on, and the other side is helping us. They want us to prevail. Yeah. We're not alone in this.
Exactly.
That's really, really important to understand. So if you're in awareness, what are you going to do? Well, if you go to my site, either yowza.com or knowledgemountain.org, there's an article, 5 Steps to Survival. All right. Now, let's take there's the old adage, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Mm-hmm. Well, we see that with a bias. We see ourselves as the students, and we see this teacher materializing out of thin air.
Right.
All right? That's the way it's perceived.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in awareness, what you have to do is flip it. It's the other side of the coin. There's a duality here. You're the teacher, not the student.
Right.
Now, if you're the teacher, you are in possession of extraordinary knowledge. Not common knowledge, extraordinary knowledge. And you have to share that so that it gets passed along for the benefit of humankind.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're going to do is pre-position yourself in an area where there's going to be likely groups of worthy students. Then once you're in those areas, you're going to focus then on collections of people within that broader community. Whether they're in churches, faith-based organizations, study groups, whatever it may be, but you're focusing and you're looking. And what you're looking for are the ones that are ready and worthy of your extraordinary knowledge. And then when you see them, and you will eventually, that's when you materialize out of nowhere before the student.
Right.
Okay? So, if you are in awareness, how do we translate that into something practical you can start doing today? Well, first off, the information that you have in being in awareness is, you got to understand, it's dangerous, because we were talking about the manifestation stuff.
Yeah.
This is going to get people killed. because they're going to be panicked, they're going to be frightened, and there's going to be yutzes that are, and I tell them, I say, just keep your mouth shut, don't tell them you know, because I guarantee some freaky nutter in all these is going to shoot out a finger and say, that guy, that gal, they knew about this all the time and manifested this destiny.
Yep.
If we kill them, we can change it before it's too late.
Right.
And you know what? Rational, sound minds are going to say behind that person, get a rope.
That's right. Yeah, well, we become the new witches. The new witch
That's
trials.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We become the new witches.
Yeah.
So keep your mouth shut. So what do? Well, there's three things you do. First off, get a ham radio license.
Yeah.
Costs a few $100s to get yourself in with a license and an inexpensive radio. The second thing you do is you use that as an escalation skill. There's a program called CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams.
I was going to ask you about that. How do you go about getting something like that?
Contact your local sheriff's office. It's usually run through a sheriff's office. It's standardized CERT training. Once you've been trained and certified anywhere in the country using the standard program, you can relocate immediately. You're into the same thing. They all teach it. Jennifer and I completed our 2-week basic training on CERT. Phenomenal program. Hearing the guy from the TSA come to speak with, that was a little spooky.
Why?
Because the TSA is convinced that the big terror threat in the United States, who are constitutionalists and believe in God, that's why it's spooky. It's like, hold on a second. We know who's doing all the killing and the shooting, they're out there, Now, it's these bad, nasty white people. It's why we have to, body search 12-year-old girls in the airport.
That's pretty scary. Yeah.
It is pretty scary stuff, but the point here is the teaching, though, is still excellent. It's phenomenal.
Wow.
You do the CERT, you get certified, join a CERT team. Be a part of the solution.
Yep.
All right? And these people are not involved in the cabal of power and all of that. They're just the ones that are going to go out and rescue folks. And the training is, once you're in CERT and you're certified, the additional courses beyond the basic level are worth thousands of dollars, and it's all free to you.
Yeah.
All right. Then another thing that you do is you join ARES, Amateur Radio Emergency System. That's run by Homeland Security. All right. And what that is, ARES is the amateur radio people that work, to replace when all the communication systems go down. They're the ones that are doing the emergency radio traffic. Good example was Katrina.
Yeah.
All right. Everything went down. And it was the hams that came down there who were part of the ARES program, and they brought some normalcy back to the situation. There's no question in my mind that if we're going to have a Star Trek future, the deciding technology will be amateur radio. Period.
Yeah.
Period. And so you join ARES. Now, if you belong in ARES and you belong in CERT, all right, and you are a ham radio operator, you could walk into any government agency during a disaster and they're going to, you come with us. We want you. Walk into a church wearing your CERT helmet and vest. Okay, what do you think they're going to say?
Well, you're definitely very wanted at that point.
That's right. And what does it cost you? Right. Some time and a few $100s.
Sure.
So enough of this wailing about beans, bullets, and bunkers.
Right.
All right? Enough.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, so true.
You get these skills. Now, another thing I talk to people is, get your kids into scouting. Get them working on those merit badges for, how to start a fire, tie knots, all of these survival things. Do you know how to shoot are you proficient with firearms? Everybody should have a long-range rifle, a shotgun, and a sidearm. All right? And you should know how to use them and be proficient with those weapons. And when I do relocation webinars for people, you can see them on the site, and so often I have divorced women, single women with children, single mothers, and I'll ask them, I say, are you proficient with guns? And they go, oh, no, guns, I'm not going to do guns.
God, no.
I'm not going to do guns. And then I always ask them the same question. Okay, you're not going to do guns. How many times do you and your daughters have to be raped before you will pick up a gun? Could you give me a number? 1, 2, 3, 4? That is assuming you're not raped and murdered. But let's have a liberal, positive view and assume that all of your rapists are going to let you live without disfiguring you. How many times do you have to get raped by a liberally sensitive rapist before you're going to pick up a gun?
Right.
And the answer is always nothing, static.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
So what I'm saying is, there's a program called Johnny Appleseed for gun proficiency. Fantastic. Do it. Go to a local indoor range. They'll have courses on weapons familiarization. You're going to learn how to fire all kinds of sidearms and how to do it safely. All right, and so you should be familiarized, and you should be getting weapons for yourself so that you are armed.
Yeah, I also suggest learning how to shoot your bow and arrow.
Yes.
Because, by the way, I do that. Because, at some point you're going to run out of bullets. And so you might just want to learn how to, have that skill. That skill's going to be very handy.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so there is going to be a problem. We're going to have cannibalism, and we are going to see what we call biters. There's going to be outbreaks of rabies, and people who come down with rabies, they're called biters because that's what rabies just makes you want to bite. And it's how the rabies is spread. So biters are going to be a problem, and you're going to, when law and order have gone away, there is no more law and order. Right. You're going to need to be able to deal with the situation and deal intelligently, and just standing there hysterically waiting for someone to rescue you is really not not the best course.
Right.
Should be trained, and I think for women it is absolutely proficient. My belief is that if every woman in the world knew how to kill a man with 2 fingers, warts and all, it would be a better world.
Oh my God. It's, it's true though. Unfortunately, but yeah.
Yeah, and so it's doing this, but getting back to, you are the teacher, you're in awareness, all right? And you're looking, you're walking into a community, and here you have Cert, Aries, Ham Radio, you're proficient with weapons, you've taken first aid courses, you have a lot of immediately salient, useful knowledge and skill that someone can put to work immediately. So just on that alone, you're instantly desirable.
Yeah, so if you don't have the ability to get yourself a plot of land, to get yourself your seeds, to get yourself all the things that you need to be able to be sustainable, then you definitely need to bring some skills to the table.
That's right.
Yeah.
As I say, what you have to do is make yourself worth your weight in beans.
Definitely. Yep, I agree.
And so that's what you're going to need to do. And so this is the way you make yourself worth your weight in beans. And then, at that point, if you're truly in awareness, you're centered with it, you're in stage 5, everyone around you is going to be going, bah!
Right.
They're going to be running up and down the aisles at Costco going, I can't find the Tabasco. We're all going to die. We're all going to die. Can't find the Tabasco.
Right.
They're going to be doing that. All right?
Yeah.
And you're just going to be frosty. You're going to be good with all this because you're seeing this from a cosmic view standpoint.
Sure.
And just by fact that you are calm with all of this and dealing with things coherently and intelligently, people are going to notice. All right? And when you speak, you know, what you're doing is you're telling people information as they ask for it. You don't sit there and just, you know, bury them with a lot of information. You're telling them as they need it. But the point is that you've been in awareness. You've had a lot of time to cycle through it. You understand what these people are going to be going through. It's not a time to go, nah, 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 I knew and you didn't. You were calling me all kinds of names, nah, 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 nah. I mean, if you're going to do that, then you deserve to drown like a rat. Period.
Yeah.
You know, what you're doing is that remember your mission as someone in awareness is to teach and to mentor and to comfort. And so you'll teach people in the community about things, but also you will become a part of the leadership brain trust. You're not a leader. Your role is to be in support of leaders, much like think tanks in our present way of doing things.
Yeah.
And so you are someone that is a trusted advisor, a confidant that people come to and they're asking because they're going to be faced with impossible decisions every day. Each and every day they're going to be faced with impossible decisions, and it's going to be soul agonizing because, you know, there are going to be winners and losers.
So basically you're saying that it's very, very important that we, you know, are not in denial of what's happening, what could be happening very, very soon, which is another thing that I'm going to ask you in a second, that we need to try to stay in embodiment, not try to check ourselves out, because, you know, there's going to be those that are going to obviously take the additional sleeping pills to not face the music that's coming down here. So, you know, especially those that are in awareness, have a very, very crucial role with what's coming down. And could be one of the reasons as to why we decided to embody during these times. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And, you know, as to the people who say, well, gosh, when it happens, I just want to die.
Yeah.
That's denial. Trust me, the people who say that now are the ones that are going to be trampling 8-year-old kids racing like hell to get out of somewhere. You know, they're the ones that are going to be in a hysterical panic and all of this, you know, this hubris that they... no, it ain't going to work for them. Yeah. There are no atheists in a foxhole.
Yeah.
All right.
I agree.
So,
I agree. So let me ask you a question, just so that we can wrap up this really, really awesome conversation. You know, because we're going into areas that, you know, it's not so much about the actual mechanics of the Planet X system, you know, but we're going into really, you know, the reality of the situation when it happens and the aftermath.
Right.
Because we need to go there. I mean, this is, you know, those of us that survive it are going to need to know a lot of the stuff. I feel that the fact that when they announced the Planet 9, you know, situation, that is a signal right there that this thing is coming close. Do you agree with that?
Well, it's what they're doing is that they're setting up their. You know, I have a very lengthy article on this, and I lay out their strategy very clearly. Remember, what is the goal? The goal is to keep as many people as possible on the coasts so that they will die. Sure. That's the goal, all right? So Planet 9 is part of a strategy that they're using now. They've really shown their hand. The first one that I saw the strategy being played with is a fellow by the name of Gil Broussard, runs Planet 7X.
Sure.
And he really woos people with his emphasis on the Bible and very slick graphics. And, his slug line is proving the Bible with science.
Right.
All right. Excuse me.
Yeah.
That's an oxymoron.
Yeah.
All right. That doesn't work. But if you take a look at what he's saying in his science, he says that Planet 7X is 7X because it's 7 times larger than the Earth, but nobody has ever seen it.
Right.
So how do you know it's 7X? But this massive planet will pass between the Earth and the Moon at a distance of 0.7 LD. And LD is lunar distance, the Earth to the Moon. Mm-hmm. Well, let's put this in perspective. The Moon has more gravitational effect on us than the Sun. If the Moon were to go away tomorrow, the entire surface of Earth would collapse by approximately 18 inches, and we would have an extinction level event. Mm-hmm. Now, you have an object 7 times the size of Earth passing between us and the Moon, and the tidal gravitational forces of such a flyby would absolutely devastate the planet. We wouldn't even be having this conversation because our species would already be extinct.
Right.
All right.
Right.
So we saw this with this guy Broussard, and we see the modus operandi has 3 principal tactics. First, change the name. Second, change the distance, which equates in the mind of the uneducated in what's really happening is to the threat. And then the third is commandeer the topic. And so you see Broussard does not say Planet X. He has no basis in science or history for his term. Instead of Planet X, which there is historical precedent for going back to the discovery of Uranus.
Right.
Then you have, on the other hand, Mike Brown, who calls his Planet 9. Right. Or what I call Plan 9 from outer space.
Right, right.
And he also says it's the planetiest planet object. And it's a Y class. I mean, everything to sidestep Planet X he can. So he changes the name. Broussard changes the name. Let's talk about the next thing, changing distance, because that defines apparent threat. And how close does it come to us? So Broussard is saying that Planet X is in a 360-year orbit, right. Planet 7X. Well, people are going, well, we're out of the Renaissance and into the early industrial. So about the time this would have come through the last time, so nobody said anything about it. It's, we're not talking about it in Sunday school. So, what's the problem? Yeah,
he says that there's some kind of a record in China or something like that back in that last time it flew by. But, it only happened in China.
Well, there's records, but what he does is he disagrees with the people who translated the records as to what they actually say. Mm. And it's a very clever manipulation. Well, Mike Brown is changing the distance, was saying it's like, 20,000 years. Yeah. So people are going, you might as well tell people, how close is it to us? In a galaxy far, far away and a long, long time ago. That's it. It's like, forget about it, right?
It's not going to even be in any of my children's experience. Why do you don't bother with it?
That's right. Yeah. And so now let's go to commandeer the topic. Now, what Gil Broussard is doing is he is viciously attacking the work of Zecharia Sitchin. All right? And Sitchin is his book, 12th Planet, translation of the Sumerian text, brilliant work that documents the history of Nibiru and what happens to us. Mm-hmm. He is, he's disparaging Sitchin with generalized attacks like, well, nobody vetted his stuff. You know,
Right.
it's like, nobody verified him. It was like, oh, yeah? You know, who are you, Yutz? So I posted a video on that. I took him to task on, you know, what he is saying about himself. And trust me, the dots do not connect.
Yeah.
But if you're going to commandeer the topic, the first thing you have to do is to eliminate competing theories and ideas. So that's what Broussard is doing by demeaning everybody else. Broussard's position is very simple. I'm right, everyone else is wrong.
Do you think he's an operative, that he's working as a disinformation specialist?
I would say to folks, look at my video and then decide for yourself.
Sounds good. Sounds fair.
Okay? Because my video just asks questions. That's all I do. I ask questions. And I do explain the history of the term Planet X in good detail. So you'd want to watch that video. It'll be on my website. Just go type up Broussard Planet 7X. It'll pop up.
Awesome.
But now we have a situation where what is Mike Brown and Caltech doing? Well, a month before they made their land-breaking announcement, and by the way, they're using the same process of science that was used since Uranus to discover Neptune and Pluto as their claim to fame, that they're observing gravitational perturbations. Okay. So, ALMA Observatory in Chile, and we documented this on our website. And again, these are the articles that I put my heart and soul into, and nobody reads them.
That's not true.
Well, a few people, good people do. Most of them go, oh, God, he's into his obtuse things. You know, tell me where to build my bunker. You know.
Yeah, that's all we want to know. I don't care how.
I do that. You know, I tell them where. I mean, you know, take, you know, just go ahead and, I'm sorry, I had a little bit of an interruption that came in. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So what he did was he attacked the ALMA Observatory, who they made actual observations of two large bodies in the far edge of this solar system. And when they announced it, they published white papers. Yeah. And it's part of the process of saying, we're on to something here.
Yeah.
Everyone take a look, and you know, if we've gone off the rail here, you know, let's figure that out, and then we'll withdraw the papers. Let's solve the problem.
Right.
It's a very good process of science that's well established. What happened with Mike Brown, who's Planet 9, was he got with the Washington Post, a green reporter by the name of Sarah Kaplan. You know, it's one of those situations where they just say, hey, you know, we're going to give you the story of a lifetime.
Right.
And they just, you know, will snowball her into doing something she has no idea what she's writing about.
Right.
And he goes in and completely humiliates the ALMA Observatory people.
God. Yeah.
And she goes in and humiliates Percival Lowell and Clyde Tombaugh. Percival Lowell founded the Lowell Observatory, and that's where Clyde Tombaugh discovered Pluto. Percival Lowell is the American father of Planet X research, period.
Wow.
All right. So she was saying that Lowell was humiliated, and that Tombaugh was a farm kid who discovered a planet.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like,
he just came from milking the cow and discovered
That's right. Yeah. That's right. You know, and so she was really playing into it. But the comments that Mike Brown was making were so mean-spirited and egotistical, and the result was there was so much pressure brought on Alma, and Alma there's not enough, the U.S. government doesn't have enough money in the game to control it.
Yeah.
But they wanted to silence it, and they brought a lot of pressure to bear, and so the Alma Observatory had to withdraw their papers, not at the speed of science, but at the speed of politics.
Yeah.
And so after this smear job, and it's documented on my website, he comes up. So he's doing the same thing. Destroy anyone else that has a competing message.
Sure.
And that's what we see with them. So why are they doing this?
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go back to remember that conversation. Don't worry, it's just going to be an interesting show in the sky.
Just an interesting show.
It'll be guys like Brown and Broussard who lay that happy nonsense on us.
Yeah. Well, because, I mean, the whole point is if you start seeing this stuff... I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, what I'm saying is that when we start seeing this stuff, when we start seeing people come out and speak against scientists who've discovered those two bodies, and you start seeing the Planet 9 thing, and you just start seeing these things. I think that to me is just because if you're already attentive to how the Cabal works and how they present this information out there, you can kind of pick up the signs that they don't want you to know about something. And that exact same thing that they don't want you to know about is exactly what you need to know about.
Yeah, but again, it's like 5 shades of lipstick on the collar.
Yeah.
99% of the people are going to go, okay, I believe you.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah, so
because they really don't want the real truth. They're not ready for it. I mean, that's just a little too far outside the comfort zone.
Exactly. So to wrap this up, let me ask you a question. And again, I'm doing it because, just to get a feel from what maybe you might have gathered up to the, with your research. Are we looking at something like in 2018? Are we going to start seeing more volcanoes and more things? Is it like 2018, or people really need to slack off that long? Do you feel it's something a little bit more tangible, like closer?
You ought to read our new Signs article. You know what?
I did.
No,
I did. I'm doing this for the purpose
I understand. You have to ask the question.
I have to.
For the benefit of your listening audience.
Yeah.
I'm asking Ari. I'm asking you to answer that question.
All right, so I will answer that question. I think we're really close. I mean, based on all the things that are happening in the planet right now that are unprecedented.
Absolutely.
And I really feel that people really need to take heed, need to go on your website, need to do their own research, connect their own dots, and start getting with the program, start getting ready. And that means either, collecting your seeds, getting water, identifying a place where they're going to go to start getting the skills that you recommended. And, moving away from the coasts, if they can possibly do that as soon as possible. Because, by the time that you've figured out that, oh, wow, look at that, I can see it with my own eyes, it will be a little too late, I think. But we'll leave it at that. Is there any final comments you want to make? Can you just go ahead and give everybody your websites again, Marshall?
Yes, my main website is Yowza, YOWUSA.com. You can also get there just with my name, MarshallMasters.com. That's with 2 L's. And then that's our science side. For the spirit side and for those in awareness, knowledgemountain.org.
Awesome.
And, we have a real opportunity here. Mm-hmm. To have that Star Trek future.
Definitely.
We really do. I want people to believe that and to think that and to have hope for it.
Definitely. And again, people, this is not about fear. This is about understanding that this has come around many times before, and humanity has survived it. We just want to have the right kind of people on the planet and going to outer space into the cosmos. We don't want the ones that are not ensouled or the ones that are possessed by who knows what. We want the ones that are in service to the light, and that would be us. So it is our responsibility to continue our species. So, Marshall, thank you very much again for joining us. Of course, this is not going to be the end of the conversation. Hopefully, we'll have you on again. This is like a continuous, evolving type of topic, and as things, become more evident, we will be having more of these. So thank you very much. And to the audience, you've, of course, been listening to Marshall Masters and myself, Ari Kopel. And this is Shattering the Matrix. I really would appreciate you all sharing this information with others, even if you're scoffed at first. And join our website, 2012emergence.com, where we're about 5,600 members and strong, all talking about this type of topic, getting stronger every day. And also, go to Amazon.com and check out my 2 books, Spiritual Warfare and the Art of Deception, The Hijacking of Spirituality, and also Getting Back to Source, Tools for Connection, Protection, and Empowerment. I thank you all again for joining me. And Marshall, God bless. Love you, guy. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.